Okay guys, welcome to another video. In today's video, I was going to try and set up a tripod and like film it while I was doing it, but it was just pretty much 10 minutes of me not talking and just, messing around, and I didn't want to mess with editing and stuff. This is just going to be a single cut video. But really quickly, I wanted to talk about composting and the importance of composting, especially with who knows what's to come. So really quickly, what is composting? Composting is kind of accelerating the natural process. Everything kind of decomposes. Composting, you're pretty much giving the material its most comfortable climate so it can accelerate decomposing. That's pretty much what composting is. You can get books on it. You can spend a lot of money on it. You can spend a little bit of money on it. It's kind of like cooking. You can buy fancy pots, pans. You can buy the fancy stove. That doesn't make you a good cook. Conversely, you can, cook a gourmet meal with a tin can over a 60-watt light bulb, or, using an electric hot plate. So it really comes down more to the cook, not to how much money you spend on it. And really quickly, I want to apologize for the wind. I'm kind of protected from the wind, but I won't know how well the audio is. But pretty much what we're looking at, I was just saying, you can spend $100 on books. You can buy all these fancy chemicals to accelerate composting. You can buy those plastic barrels that spin. Or you can kind of do what I did. These pallets were free from work. And this is just, we're in the process of kind of changing up the garden, but this is just kind of in the garden. It didn't really cost anything. And the importance of compost can't really be understated. Compost is like the key ingredient to, if you want to grow your own food. If you have poor soil and you add compost to it, I mean, you could probably grow vegetables in beach sand if you added compost. And compost, it fixes poor soil, it adds nutrients, it allows moisture to hold, it aerates the soil. There's just a ton of benefits of compost. And this isn't like an in-depth how to do it video, but I just want to talk about kind of the way I do it and why I think it's kind of important. So pretty much what you're looking at, so these two piles I just kind of churned up. That last one there is ready to go compost. That was the first compost we did. This one is also I hadn't mixed it up in probably a couple months. It's just been sitting here, and I was kind of surprised with how dark it is. You can still see there's some random pine needles and stuff in there. And then this is our last pile. And this, I won't really go into exactly what's in it because that's based on where you live. But there's some straw, there's grass clippings, there's wood chips, there's pine needles, there's just a lot of different stuff, leaves, ground up leaves. And so that's our newest pile, and it looks really big, but as it decomposes, it breaks down, and there's a lot of airspace in that right now. And as it breaks down, it'll probably only end up about that much, right? But yeah, that's kind of our system. It's not original. A lot of people do it this way, and then there's a lot of people that do newer ways, which might be better, like those tumbler systems. I've looked into those, and we might get one, but pretty much I wanted to produce bulk compost. I wanted to produce more than just for a flower garden. We have a handful of raised beds, and we're constantly, right now I'm in the process of clearing a chunk of our property, pulling stumps up, grading it, so we can have a larger garden than we did this year. So I wanted to produce compost in bulk, so that's why I didn't go with the little spinny ones. But essentially all that I use, and again, if you ask 100 different people, you'll get 100 different answers. But this auger in the back, I got it originally for fence posts. It's cordless, it's Ryobi. For fence posts, depending on the type of ground, I wouldn't recommend it. Our ground is really rocky, which I didn't really realize till I started digging. So it didn't really work that well for fence posts, but you know, that works really well to churn up compost. But you don't need that. But I use that a lot. It saves time, it saves my back. And then pretty much a digging fork is what I use. This is off Amazon. Again, it's not specific products. This one, it says it's stainless, and I knew it would just be sitting outside, so I thought that was cool. This is used for like horse hay or for like shoveling mulch if you're in like the landscape arena. And then this we got from a farm supply store, maybe Tractor Supply, and it's called like a Dura fork. This, once you know everything's kind of broke down, this one's a lot lighter than this one. It's easy to use, and it's useful. Like, you can use it as a rake, you can use it for moving pine needles. It's really multi-purpose. This one works really good for like digging into the pile, you know, and moving bulk material. And then this one is meant more for like digging in dirt, but I also use it to dig into the compost piles. And then you can spend, like over there we have one of those like compost buckets. We got one of those when we first started, and we're like, oh, that's kind of cool. You don't need that in a kitchen. It looks cleaner to have that. It has some type of like charcoal vent, so it doesn't, your food scraps don't smell. But what we ended up using, because we put coffee grounds, tea bags, and then like food scraps. So what we use is the old coffee containers, recycling. And then what we've just recently been using is old formula containers. Anyone who's had, you know, young ones realizes you go through a ton of these. And you know, look how bulky those are. Yeah, we could just throw them away, but we started saving them, and then as one empties, we have it kind of next to the coffee maker, and we put coffee grounds, tea bags, food scraps. Just make sure if you wake up in the middle of the night trying to make formula that you don't open the wrong one, because that wouldn't be good. But these formula containers, they're paper. I mean, like, there's not a ton of stuff you can use them for, so we just kind of tried to recycle. But like I said, you can buy the fancy like stainless steel buckets with vents if you want to, or just use containers you already have and recycle. Pretty much like I was saying, you can buy books. We bought like one book, and then I started reading around online how to do it, hot composting, the lasagna method, vermiculture, something like that, using worms. And there's just so much information that it was starting to drive me crazy. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it and do it my way and see if it works. So again, you can get tons of books, you can research it, you can search, you can spend days on the internet learning about compost, learning about the proper percentages of nitrogen versus like nitrogen and the potassium, and greens versus browns, and percentages and ratios. But when it comes down to it, at least what I found out, I haven't been measuring, I haven't been doing like proper ratios. Just as we get food scraps, coffee grounds, grass clippings, shredded leaves, I just add it to the pile. And then you can see kind of right there, I have two of them. Those are just thermometers, like meat thermometers. They're actually specific to compost piles. You can get those. And I think it's more to make people feel happy because they see the dial at like 120 and they're like, oh, that means my compost is breaking down extra quick. You can get them, and maybe when you first start out, just to make you feel better and to encourage you to keep doing it. But either way, composting is kind of a long process. Are there ways to accelerate it? Sure. Are there videos out there where they have compost ready to go in 30 days. I've seen some of those, but it all comes down to like, it's a long process. You can do things to speed it up, and then at a certain point there's a cost benefit ratio, where like if you're spending an hour per day every single day churning this compost, adding water to it, adding material to it, yeah, you might have it at the end of the 30 days, but it took a lot of time to get it. This is kind of more of a passive system. As we get, a ton of food scrap, they'll come out here, throw it in, mix the pile up, get more oxygen to it. And you can see it works. Like I said, compost is kind of always breaking down. So a lot of this compost and a lot of that pile used to be bigger, and there's some pine needles on the surface just because we have pine needles falling on it, which isn't the best thing for compost, but it's not the worst. But we've used a lot of that compost, and it's really, really good compost, a lot better than you're going to get from the store. So like I said, composting, in the beginning I was really impatient, and I just wanted it. I was trying to do the hot composting, and I was adding all the stuff and getting it really hot, and then I'd dig into it and it would be steaming and it would be really cool. But then I kind of realized that it's going to break down whether I'm putting a ton of effort into it or a little bit of effort, and there's so many other things that I can pay attention to. So what I found is, like, if you do want to start composting, your first batch will break down fairly quick, and that's good. And then as you start to do it, you're probably going to become more lazy about it. But your ready compost, you can add some of that to your new compost piles. And a lot of the bacteria and good stuff in your ready to go compost, you're adding to your new piles. It'll kind of accelerate the breakdown of those. Once compost, is there a shelf life to compost? I'm not sure. But it's not like right when it's done you need to use it. I think if you just let it sit, it'll be fine, and it'll just continue to break down. Some people might say if it's getting rained on, it'll get its nutrients washed out. That may or may not be true, but I just wanted to make this video. I didn't want it to be super long, but composting it's kind of a long process. So that's why, if you've thought about doing it, composting isn't something that you wait for the SHTF or the balloon to go up to start doing it, because it takes a while. So if you've thought about doing it, start doing it. You don't have to live in a country. Like, you can live in the city. Everyone eats kind of the same type of food. Everyone produces about the same amount of food scraps. Most people have yards that they have to mow, so get a bagger for your mower. We just have a cordless push ego mower with a bagger. So we just bag the clippings, and then every time we mow, like during the summer, we add it to the piles, churn them around. So there's no shortage of material you can put into compost. A lot of people use that as kind of an excuse. And like I said, you can do it small scale. You can use a 5-gallon bucket. You can this is probably, each one of these is about 4 by 4 feet. So 4 by 4, 4 by 4, 4 by 4. You can run the math, but it's hard to calculate the actual volume of compost, because this has a lot more volume than that. But once this breaks down, it'll be like, maybe a half yard. So, I would just say there's not such thing as too much compost, because, sometimes growing and planting stuff can be addictive. So you might only use a little bit of it one year, but the next year you might use 5 times the amount, and the year after that maybe 10 times the amount. And the good thing about having too much compost as opposed to not enough is you won't be frugal about using it. Now, is it possible to use too much of it? Allegedly, I guess. But we use it pretty heavily, just because we have a lot of it. I don't really see a lot of downsides. And again, some people might point out, oh, it's going to burn the plants and whatever. For us, that hasn't been the case, but you know, if you plant in just 100% compost, maybe. But all the vegetables, everything, you know, we planted, the fruit trees, we planted blueberries, all of them are doing super good. And we used a decent amount of compost. So again, I just wanted to do this video. This is one of those preps that it not only saves you money, it kind of gives you something to do. And I understand people, they're like, well, my life's super busy, I don't have time for that. But this, you're actually making something, and you're making something beneficial to yourself, as opposed to going and punching a time clock and producing something for someone else. With this, you're actually making something for yourself, and it doesn't really cost anything, because all those food scraps, they either go in the garbage or they go in your compost pile. It might actually save you some money, because what we've noticed is ever since we started composting, we produce way less garbage. And because of that, our garbage bill, believe it or not, was about $80 a month. $80 per month, yeah. It didn't start that high, it just gradually went up that high. So we canceled it, and we're now, because we don't produce a lot of trash, every couple months we just have a trailer and we bring it to the landfill. So by composting, it actually saved us money, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to end the video now before I ramble on. It's getting kind of windy. I don't know how the audio is, but go back to my homepage, watch some of my current videos. If you like what you see, feel free to subscribe and start composting.